the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this last day of August. It's Sunday, August 31st. I hope everybody is having a great weekend and looking forward to September. It's hard to believe, right? 2025 going by like that. Anyway, as you can see, I am still in Flawed, still in doing my shows out of the Airbnb. We'll be moving to my office starting tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll get to a regular location. Office times will still be changing kind of day to day, anywhere between 2, I think, and 2 and 5 p.m. East Coast time will be the shows for the rest of the week. And as I said, they will be from my office that I rented especially to do these shows. All right, so as many of you know, I am in Florence, and today I did something. I've been here a couple of days, and today I did something I always do in Florence, and that is I went to see Michelangelo's David. I don't think that surprises any of you. You know the real love I have for that sculpture, and as always, it is awe-inspiring. It is just a fantastic experience to be with David. And I thought I'd talk a little bit about David at the beginning of the show today. Then we'll talk about the question yesterday, I think, that Michael asks about maturity and Jordan Peterson. I found some video of Jordan Peterson, 2 different videos of Jordan Peterson talking about maturity. Then are not necessarily aligned one with the other, so we'll talk about both of those. And we'll talk a little bit more about maturity, about time, perspective on time, and so we'll just dig in a little bit on that issue. And again, I'll show you a couple of videos of Jordan talking about this. Then on a completely different tangent, we're going to talk about inflation, price inflation. And so somebody wrote a lengthy critique of my analysis of Gen Z and the wealth that they have, and the income over the last 40, 50 years or whatever. And what they did is their critique was based on, well, if we measure everything in gold, then we're not better off than we were 40 years ago. So I want to comment on that, because I think it's an interesting issue, and I think a lot of people have real confusion about the role gold plays today in our economy. And then finally, I have a long ode review of a book, Focus on the Road, by Larry Radke, and maybe I'm mispronouncing his name, by Larry, that he paid me to do a review, I don't know, a year ago, and I haven't done it. So we're gonna do 3/4 of it today. So it's a book of short stories. We'll cover the first 3 short stories from the book in the review today. So that's the program. It's not hugely intense. It's a Sunday. It's a little light and fun, and hopefully interesting for all of you guys. And maybe these will also make some good short videos. Anyway, let's jump into Michelangelo's David. And let me just say this. You really cannot have an appreciation for any sculpture, but certainly for David, without seeing it in person. That his photos don't do a sculpture justice, because they're 2-dimensional, and you don't get to see it in life. More so, I think, than painting, because painting are 2-dimensional. Seeing a painting live still matters, because you get the texture, you get the real colors, you get the effect of the lighting. Like Vermeer, you cannot appreciate Vermeer from a book. Seeing the paintings in person is just a different experience. because the projection of light in the painting is what the painting is about to a large extent with Vermeer, and that you can really only appreciate when you see the painting. And with a sculpture, it's three-dimensional. It sits in a space, and you can't really appreciate it without experiencing it in real life. Now, after you experience it in real life, you can really admire the photographs, and the photographs often provide you with details that you didn't see when you saw the sculpture up close. Dramatic lighting, all of that can add hugely to the experience, but it's never the same as actually seeing the sculpture in person. So that's number one. Second is size matters. Size matters. Michelangelo's David has a presence because of the quality, but also because of just the sheer size of the sculpture that you cannot get from a small replica, even if it's a great, really, really good, perfect replica. I mean, the whole sculpture is sculpted to be this particular size. So, and to be looked at, looking up. So again, you can't appreciate it by seeing small replicas. I mean, and most replicas are really bad. And then finally, what's really amazing is I've seen many replicas of many. I've seen 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 replicas of Michelangelo's David in real life size, in the size of the original. There's one in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace. If you're in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace, it's worth going to see it. There's one at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. Again, if you're there, there's also a replica of Moses, real life, also Michelangelo's Moses, at the Victoria and Albert, and that's worth seeing. And then there are 2 in Florence itself. There's one at the piazza where the original used to be, until they decided, I think very, very smartly, to protect it from the elements, the weather, by putting it indoors and really creating a space for it. And then there's a 4th one in Florence, up on a hill overlooking the city. So there are actually 4 replicas, and they're all magnificent, and they're all amazing, and they're all beautiful, and they're all stunning, and all of that. And when you walk into the Accademia and see the original, it's just a different experience. There's something about the marble that it comes alive. All the other replicas are casts in, I think, some kind of marble dust or something like that. This is the original carved sculpture in Carrara marble that Michelangelo worked on. And even if you don't know all that, it just has a completely different feel to it, sense to it. It's also beautifully placed and beautifully lit, right, at the Accademia in Florence. But it just has a life of its own, and it's as if it's projecting light. And marble is just a beautiful material. And when you see marble and you compare it to like a casting of marble dust or some other kind of stone, there's a huge advantage. The marble itself is vibrant. So there are very few artworks that are literally worth traveling just to see. Just an artwork, going around the world to see it. This is one of them, right? And now, of course, it's in Florence, where there's probably another 50 to 100 artworks worth expending significant time to see. But it's worth traveling to Florence just to see the Michelangelo's David. And then you can also go and see all the other great stuff that's here. Rome is another destination that's worth it. The Louvre maybe, but there are not many. There are not many that are worth just traveling just for that. And this certainly is one of them. It's stunning. The sculpture itself is, Michelangelo carved it when he was in his early 20s. He was born in 1475, and this was carved between 1501 and 1504, so in his kind of late 20s. He was 25 when he started it. It is, obviously heroic, dramatic, but it has a calm to it, a resoluteness to it, that is truly inspiring. This is a young, beautiful, beautiful man. I mean, the muscles, the tone of the body, everything about the body is just magnificent. It's not super detailed. There's detail there, like you can see the veins in the arms and stuff, but it's not super intricate. It's just stylized, enough. You see these powerful muscles, and you can, and everything. The whole body is tense and ready for action, and he's got this beautiful, beautiful pose. He's got one leg leaning, stretched out forward. He's weight is on the back leg. It's relaxed, tense at the same time, and ready for action. Ready for action. The torso, the abs, the back. It's just all beautifully, perfectly done. Not it's not like what is it? Some of the sculptures you see. I don't know, like the Atlas in New York, where you see all the muscles and super stylized. And no, this is a real human being, powerful human being, the image of a perfect human being, physically. And then you've got this, but again, the way he stands, the way. The way the weight is shifted, the way his body is tense and ready for action, all of that conveys values, conveys ideas. And then you see that face, the face of concentration, determination, commitment, readiness. There's no fear there. There is focus, intense focus on the task at hand. And even if you know nothing about David and Goliath and the story of David and Goliath, it doesn't matter. You get everything you need to know from the sculpture itself, as you do from every great work of art. You get it from the work of art itself. You don't need too much of the backstory. This was a commission. David was a commission that Michelangelo took from the city of Florence. That wanted a sculpture of a David. It was a block of marble that had come from Carrara. Two other sculptors had tried to carve it and started carving it, and they deemed the marble too flawed to continue. Michelangelo, in spite of that, in spite of obvious flaws in the marble that these other two sculptors, experienced sculptors, had identified, decided to go ahead with the project. And indeed, he did. He carved the whole thing. Originally, the statue was supposed to be at the top of the Duomo. It was supposed to be way up. And once people saw the sculpture itself, they said, "Oh no, we don't want it up there." And they basically put it right at the center, at the heart of public life in Florence. It was basically there. For 300 years until the 19th century, when they decided to move it indoors somewhere, and they ultimately picked the location where it is at today for preservation and protecting. It's amazing that it turns out that it sat in a box for 25 years before it was ultimately installed. For 25 years, nobody had access to the David. Now, a cast was made of it. And the reason a cast was made of it is that they lugged the cast around different places in Florence to see how it would look in order to figure out where it should be ultimately placed. And they used a cast for that, leaving the original in the Palazzo. And Once they decided, of course, they created it up, moved it. It's not that far. It's a 15-minute walk, maybe 20-minute, 15-minute walk, I think, from the Accademia to the Palazzo where it originally was. And it's been there since kind of the late 19th century. Again, the cast that they originally used in order to figure out where to put it is used in that palazzo, and the two other casts were made that I know of, one for the Victoria and Albert Museum and the other one for the other David up in the hills overlooking Florence. What else can I tell you about Michelangelo's David? Again, worth being here to see it. Easily spend a half an hour, 45 minutes just looking at the David, just being inspired by it. There's so many angles, so just going around. Luckily, you can get a 360 view of the sculpture. I have my favorite angles that I like to look at it. I've been there so many times. I'm not sure how many. I mean, 5, 6 times, I think. I think that's right. And I'm so familiar with it because my wife actually said at some point, it's like visiting a relative. We know him. We got pictures of him all over our house, and we visit every time we're in Florence, and we try to visit often. So it's very, and it's still, in spite of all that familiarity, when you take the corner from the entrance and you walk and you take the turn, and there he is at the end of the corridor in front of you, full size, in his full magnificence. It's breathtaking. So encourage everybody. You're on rules for life. Go see Michelangelo's David. Make it a point in your life to check him out. Check him out. All right. Let me see something. 1 second. Yeah, during my wife just reminded me that during the Second World War, Italy was being bombed by the Allies, and a lot of effort was put to the credit of the people preserving the arts all over Italy. A lot of effort was put, and this is true in other parts of Europe as well, but in Italy especially, as the Allies were bombing. A lot of effort was put into preserving the artworks and into protecting them. This was a high priority for the Italians. I don't know if this was ordered from the top. I don't know if this was the initiative of the curators. My guess would be it was the initiatives of the museums and the curators, and they made heroic efforts to save art all over Italy. And during the war, they created a special protective casing. Was built around it, just in case the building was bombed or if the building was damaged. They didn't try to move him, but they built kind of a bunker around him to protect him, to protect the sculpture from the bombing. I don't know that much of Florence was bombed. I know Rome was definitely bombed. Naples, we were in Naples, was definitely bombed. Some buildings were completely destroyed. Some churches with some magnificent artworks were definitely destroyed. But I don't know, and I don't think Florence was bombed. I don't think the Vatican was bombed, and that's why those artworks have all survived. But I do know there was bombing going on in Rome itself. Anyway, worth the trip. If you're in Europe, it's easy, it's cheap. You get on a train, get on an airplane. Airplanes tickets in Europe are amazingly cheap if you're willing to fly coach. But if the United States, make the effort of putting together, taking some time aside and traveling to Italy and spending a few days in Florence, and David, of course, should be on the list of things. And as we explore Florence, I'll give you other places I recommend going. The other thing that's amazing in the Accademia is there are 6 unfinished sculptures by Michelangelo, 4 from Julius II, Pope Julius II's tomb that was planned, and 2 other unfinished works. And it really is, I mean, it's tragic and sad that they were never finished because they would have been magnificent. There are 4 sculptures that are sculptures of slaves, of which the 2 that were actually finished are at the Louvre. Dying Slave is one of them at the Louvre Museum. So we know the quality of the ones that were finished, and they're just magnificent, just absolutely magnificent. So stirring, so emotional, so revealing of the artist's values, but also inner turmoil. And these would have been the same. I mean, the bodies are twisted in interesting ways. The muscles, you can see what they could have and would have been, and of course you can appreciate what they are even unfinished. Just the kind of power and strength, but also the torment that was involved that Michelangelo is conveying in these sculptures. Michelangelo had particularly later in life, had a very, very different sense of life than Michelangelo's David, in a sense that his religion, in a sense, caught up with him, I think. And he struggled between, he had a real mind-body dichotomy, and there's a real struggle between the physical nature of reality and the nature of the soul that wants to escape the body in a Christian terminology. But it's so beautiful, it's so magnificent. You could, I think anybody can appreciate it, even if not holding a similar philosophical view. And what you can also get is you can actually see the chisel marks on the unfinished work, and you can get a sense. I mean, you have to be really good at this, but my wife is. So she figured she saw in it. She learned from it kind of his technique of how he actually did these sculptures, and it's truly fascinating. Anyway, highly recommend seeing those as well, seeing the 2 at the Louvre. Anything by Michelangelo is worth seeing, but his David and his Pietà and the 2 dying slaves, those and the 2 slaves at the Louvre, I think those are the 4 sculptures that are absolute musts in a lifetime. So. And the Pietà is sad because you can't get very close to it. They put it behind bulletproof glass, and it's hard to get to. It's hard to really see. That's one way you should see it, but then look at pictures, because there's some really good photographs of it where you really get to appreciate the details of it. But again, encourage you to check out the David. David, you can get up pretty close. All right. Yeah, if you have any questions about Florence, about art, about Michelangelo, about David, about any of these things, feel free to jump into the Super Chat and ask over there. Again, the Super Chat's a great way for you to kind of dictate the show, because I get to answer your questions, whatever you want to talk about. So please step in and participate, and also by participating, you get to support the show, which is great, because we are a show funded by contributions from you. All right, yesterday we had a question from Michael about maturity and what maturity is, and he quoted Jordan Peterson as talking about maturity as involving responsibility for another human being. And in particular, something about maturity, and this is actually a quote from Jordan, as we'll see in a minute, like, maturity can only be achieved by being a parent. Only when you take responsibility over a child can you actually achieve maturity. And I thought, and I think that's wrong, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday. So I went and looked for the Jordan Peterson video, and while looking for that, I found another Jordan Peterson video about maturity, and this one's actually pretty good. That is, I think this one is, while he doesn't use the language that I would use, and we'll talk about that, I'll play it for you. It it's quite good in terms of what he thinks maturity entails. And I actually agree with it. So I thought I'd show you that because, and then I'll show you a video where he talks about maturity being requiring, if you will, having children. So we'll watch both of those and see kind of the difference. I guess sometimes Jordan, depends on the context, his approach to a particular problem. I'm not sure it's as a when these two were made. I do think that, I don't know which one was made first. I could guess that the one we're going to watch first was made a while ago, and the other one is a more recent one, where you see a little bit of a change in Jordan's perspective on things. So let me see if I can play this for you. Now let me know about sound, if the sound is coming across okay. This is one of those short videos, so it's got its dimensions are kind of messed up. So this is Jordan Peterson just talking about maturity. I'm going to play, I think I'll play the whole thing. I think I'm going to mute my microphone so you don't hear it twice. Once coming out of, although I should have worn headphones, and then we wouldn't have had this problem. But I don't actually like doing the show with headphones. But anyway, I'm going to mute my mic so you don't hear it twice, and we're gonna play it, and we'll play it, and then we'll comment on it once it's done. Let me mute my mic.
What's the difference between a mature person and an immature person? Well, first of all, hope that we can all agree that there is a difference between like a toddler and a responsible adult, because otherwise, why would we grow up? Okay, so what characterizes a toddler? Well, a toddler is characterized by possession by a sequence of whims. Okay, so why is that counterproductive? Well, because the toddler wants what he wants right now, no matter what. Okay, so what does that mean, no matter what? It means no matter what it costs his future self, and no matter what it costs other people. Okay, so why is that bad? Well, if you betray your future self, you die. And if you can't get along with other people, then you die. You can't engage in reciprocal altruism, for example. So what you try to do when you socialize children is that you extend their purview so that as their cortex integrates, they're able to regulate their impulsive whim in accordance with their future self and with other people, right? So that's like the definition of maturity. What's the difference between a mature person?
All right, so he just gave us what he believes is the definition of maturity. And, for the most part, I agree. A toddler places his immediate gratification as his primary. Maturity involves being able to delay gratification. Maturity involves being able to look into the future, think about future consequences, and adjust your behavior in the present based on future consequences. Maturity involves having a hierarchy of values, understanding that one must give up a lower value to get a higher value in a trade. I think immaturity, you want the higher value without giving up anything, without giving up the lower value. So, for example, you want to have the nice car or the nice home without having to do the work to earn the money to be able to achieve the nice car, the nice home. So you're not involved. You don't see the value in trade, what he calls reciprocal altruism. I'll just call trade, right? It's not reciprocal altruism that involves other people. It's the issue of trade, and it's the issue of earning things that requires time. So maturity is really the ability to project oneself into the future, think rationally, and basically decide on actions in the present, taking the future into account. They've done these, tests with children. And if you put a piece of chocolate in front of a child and you say, you can have this piece of chocolate anytime you want, but if you can wait and not eat it for half an hour or an hour or whatever, you get 2 pieces of chocolate. So if you can resist your impulse to eat it right now, it's tasty, it's good. then you will be rewarded with an extra chocolate. Most children will eat the chocolate right now. They cannot project into the future and control themselves based on the idea that I will have two in the future. It's the bird in the hand. I want the bird in the hand, right? But it's not an issue of trust. It's an issue of cognitive ability. Projecting into the future requires cognition. Maturity involves being able to project into the future, being able to consider future outcomes and consider what he calls your future self. It's about being able to control your whims. So maturity involves being able to control your whims and being able to be a rational being. And again, children, there's certain capacities that they don't have. And one of the roles of a parent is to teach them and to guide them and to show them the value of waiting, the value of delayed gratification, the value of trading, the value of seeing life over time, not just in an instant. And of course, the value of not living by whim, but living by reason, living by thought, living rationally. I think Jordan captures some of that, at least, in his, what he calls a definition. It's not really a definition. It's in this minute video that he presents. I think that's a much better presentation of maturity than what we heard that Michael quoted yesterday, and we'll see another version of it today. So again, maturity is the ability to be rational, the ability to project into the future and to guide one's actions in the present based on a hierarchy of values with the future taken into account. That is, your future outcomes, the thought of future outcomes, including the ability to trade with other people and the consequence of that trade. It is immature just to want stuff without thinking about the cost, or without thinking about the work required, the values required in order to attain that stuff. Maturity involves understanding that wanting something doesn't make it happen, that wanting something, achieving something requires certain steps. Those steps have to be taken in order to achieve the thing one desires. All right. Let me show you the other video, because this one's, I think, in some senses, this is maybe a later Jordan Peterson. I'm not sure if more mature. I'm just going to resize the window. I think that's good. Jordan Peterson, and I think this is now very different, and it's interesting that his perspective is so different within a few years. It would be my guess. This is a year ago. I'm not sure when that other video was made.
One of the things I've got in trouble for saying, which is true anyways, is that you don't grow up till you have kids. And people who don't have kids, who think they're grown up, take exception to that. And I can understand why, but I don't really care, because you're not mature until someone matters more than you do. And that, unless there's something wrong with you, like seriously wrong, and that happens to people, if you have kids, that will happen to you. And you might say you could be committed to something else with equal intensity. It's like, yeah, maybe. I doubt it, but maybe. There might be one person in 1,000 who's capable of taking on a burden that's equivalent, let's say, to care for a child in some other form, care for an ailing relative, for example, or a sibling, or maybe even sacrificial love for a husband or a wife. Very rare. Very rare.
What maturity does that give you to have
All right, I forgot to put the volume on, right? There was no audio. Sorry, I muted myself and didn't unmute myself. God. So this is a very different Jordan Peterson. This is a Jordan Peterson much more interested in burden, in difficulty, in the struggle. Also, a Jordan Peterson that's much more focused on the idea of the other. That is of, you've got to, you reach the higher form of life, and you will, the highest form of maturity, when you love or you care about somebody else more than you care about yourself. And since he doesn't believe you can really do that unless it's with a child, you can never really achieve that level of maturity. Now, I give him credit for not thinking that we should all go around loving our neighbor, as much as we do ourselves, or more so, that he limits it just to children. But it's all other focused, responsibility, burden focused. He's gone away from the idea that maturity is about this, the difference between being a whim-worshipping, instant gratification creature and a creature capable of rational, long-term thinking and taking into account the future and taking into account delayed gratification and the benefits of delayed gratification. That's a very kind of different place of emphasis, which is interesting. I don't know why that change happened, but it is a significant change, I think. I prefer the first Jordan Peterson significantly, I think. I think basically, in much of what he said in the first, he's wrong against some of the terminology. He's right in terms of kind of the emphasis, in terms of what maturity means, in terms of his intent is to a large extent right on. Right. So, what we're seeing now is this more, you got to go through the rough and gritty, you've got to really, and if you don't have children, you can never attain maturity. That just is wrong. That just makes no sense. And it's this idea that you have to, there's some elevated state that you reach when you care for somebody more than you care for yourself. And I mean, this is him recommitting to altruism, recommitting to an altruistic philosophy, an altruistic ideology, which I don't think was front and center for him in his, I guess, original, when he originally became famous. So he has changed. He has changed. So yeah, I think maturity is an important concept. It's obviously something that we expect adults to achieve. It's something that we definitely have the capacity to achieve. I mean, children don't have the frontal, the frontal cortex. They don't have that part of the brain that allows them to think into the future and to really plan and to consider and they can't be fully rational. But once you achieve a certain age, this is the expectation that should be placed on you. That is what maturity involves. And to a large extent, I think an educational system that does not emphasize that, does not emphasize thinking, does not emphasize values, a hierarchy of values, how to deal with values, that does not emphasize trade and the essence of trade, does not emphasize thinking long-term about your own well-being, about your own values, which is what your own well-being means, your own values, and figuring out what's more important, what's less, again, hierarchy of values. It shouldn't be surprising that as we emphasize more and more emotion, more and more whim, we get kids that are less and less able. We get people who are less and less able in our culture to achieve maturity, or that it takes them longer to achieve that maturity. Or, I mean, this is the sense in which Jordan Peterson is right about the children. Children force you into that recognition, at least to some extent. I think work does as well. Like, if you don't feed your kids, something really bad is going to happen. And it's pretty obvious, and it's pretty quick, and it's pretty instant, and you figure it out. If, I think the same thing is true at work. If you fail in your work, nobody cares about your feelings, your emotions, your state of mind. I mean, you fail enough times, you fail, you're out. So there is a, kids who grow up and enter their 20s and they're still immature, and there are many of them. Americans are very immature in their early 20s. A reality kind of knocks them over the head. And the reality of having kids and the reality of getting fired from work, the reality of life, the kind of burdens and struggles that Jordan Peterson talks about, they will knock sense into you. That is true. And people become mature in the sense that they start taking into account the future. In that sense of maturity, yeah, having kids will knock sense into you. But that's not ideal. That's not the purpose of having kids. And that is not the only way to achieve the maturity. You can achieve maturity just by being a rational human being and by taking your values seriously. All right, let's see. What did I want to do? Yes, we've got another topic. All right. So, yeah, maturity is an interesting issue. Time is an interesting issue. Attitudes towards time are interesting issues. We'll talk about those issues more in the future. I want to talk about gold. A lot of people have this perception that gold is a measure of inflation. The price of gold is a measure of inflation. So, for example, the price of gold, when the U.S. went off the gold standard for the final time in 1971, was $35 an ounce. Today, it's $3,464. It's basically 100 times more than it was back then. And what people say is that's a real measure of inflation, and that means that the dollar is worth 1/100th of what it was worth in 1971. Now, that's just not true in terms of purchasing power. It's just, lacks reality. The price of gold does not match real inflation. Now, how do you measure real inflation in terms of inflating of the money supply? I don't know, but maybe it's M2, but it's not gold. If what you mean by inflation is price increases, inflation, gold does not match price increases. So somebody who believes that gold is the real measure of the value of money, the real measure of the value of a dollar is how much gold it can buy. If you do that and you take wages today, like I've shown you graphs of average wages going up, hourly wages going up, and they've gone up since the mid-1990s. Really since 1994, they've gone up steadily, according to pretty much every measure. But what he was saying is, look, that's using conventional price inflation measures like the PCE, which is what I was using, the Personal Consumption Index, personal consumption expenditure, something like that. Anyway, and he was saying you should use gold, and if you use gold, people are a lot poorer today. They make a lot less money than they made back then. And yeah, that's true. And things are a lot more expensive than they were back then. And I was like, okay, but that can't be right. I mean, it's just not, it just doesn't reflect reality. Gold is not a measure of the inflation we've had. Its price today does not reflect the inflation we've had. It's a speculative asset. It's not money. Today, it's a speculative asset. And as a speculative asset, a lot of factors go into the valuation of gold. So I figured, okay, why don't we make this personal? I know how much money I made in 1994. 1994, yes. And I know how much money I make today. You know. And I can divide the amount of money I made in 1994 by the price of gold, and that'll give me how much ounces of gold I made in 1994. And in 1994, I basically made 167 ounces of gold. That was my annual salary, 167 ounces of gold, right? Yes, 167 times 384 gives you 64,000, which is about my salary in 1994. Well, if I take the price of gold today, let me just do this one second. If I take the price of gold today, what would my salary today have to be for me just to have the same lifestyle, right? The same purchasing power as I did back then. I'd have to have, 167 ounces times, right, $3,464 per ounce. So in order for me not to just stay the same purchasing power over the last, since 1991, which is what, 31 years ago, right? I would have to make today $578,488. Just to have the same standard of living as I had back then. Now that's nuts. That's completely insane. $578,488 buys me a ton more. I mean, not even close, a ton more than $64,000 did in 1984. The cost of living has not gone up 10x. It's gone up 2x, but it's not gone up 10x. Housing maybe has gone up 3x, but it's not gone up 10x. Gold has gone up 10x. It's gone from $384 an ounce to $3,464 an ounce. So gold is not tracking my cost of living. It's not tracking cost of housing. It's not tracking the cost of groceries. It's certainly not tracking the cost of computers, which has gone down dramatically. How many ounces of gold does a computer cost today? Less than one? How many ounces of gold did a computer cost back in 1994? 10? It's gone down by 90% in gold terms. So, the idea that you can measure the cost of living and the value of your wages by turning it into, the gold equivalent is just nonsense. Gold is a hedge. Gold is a protection. Gold is a speculative asset. Gold is an emergency fund. Gold is not a measure of inflation, either monetary inflation or price inflation. And it's not a measure of, the increase in the cost of living. It's just bogus to think of it that way. So, yeah. When I read his critique of the thing, it didn't seem right. And then I ran my own numbers, and it was obviously just nonsense. So for all you gold bugs out there, I'm sorry. It's just not what you think it is. I'm all for gold. I huge respect for gold, and you should have some gold in your portfolio. It's a great investment. It's an important investment. It provides obviously an inflation hedge, but it does much more than just inflation because it's gone up much faster than inflation. Inflation has gone up. Price inflation has gone up about 100% since 1994. 89% or 90% on the PCE basis, 118% on the CPI basis. I'd say 90%. And generally, people think inflation is higher than it really is because they don't take into account the increased quality of goods. As we saw, the price of televisions basically gone down 90%. The price of computers has gone down much more than that if you take into account quality. And the price of an iPhone, well, you couldn't have an iPhone. So how do you even measure that? in terms of standard of living, quality of life. So, yeah, it is what it is. All right, let's see. So hopefully that is useful. But again, things are not as bad as you think they are. In terms of finances, in terms of cost of living, in terms of all these things. By the way, house prices have gone up in the United States from 1984 till today, on average across the entire country, is 137%. So that's higher than CPI, which is 118%, higher than PCE, which is basically 90%. But it's not like it's basically house prices are more than doubled. If you live in California, home prices have gone up 276%. And this is why the whole housing issue, and that means it's gone up more than double, call it inflation, price inflation. The entire housing problem is a problem of the coasts. It's a problem of lack of supply in California, in Washington, Oregon, in New York, in Boston, and in some other countries, other counties and cities where zoning is restricted building that are desirable to live in. I don't know, maybe Denver, but I don't think prices have gone up that much in Denver. But it's a huge California issue. But that's all an issue of supply. All right, hopefully that was helpful. All right, let's jump in with my review of Forks in the Road. So Forks in the Road was written by a supporter of this show. You can get it on Amazon. It's Forks in the Road. That's a good title. Generally a good title. Choices, right? Forks in the Road representing choices. It's a book of short stories. They're basically 4 short stories in the book. I've read 3 of the 4. So this is not a review of the 4th. I'll try to read the 4th next few weeks and provide a review of it. So let me first say that, this is just my, and I'm going to say subjective, and I really do mean subjective, response to these short stories. I'm not an expert on literature. I'm not an expert on writing. Indeed, I don't think of all the arts, this is one I have probably the least knowledge of, put it that way. So take it for what it's worth. Larry wanted me to do this in spite of, I've given that caveat many, many times, and people have still wanted me to do this, maybe partially because this is advertising for the books. And I did review Miraben's short story, was it a year ago? It's been a long time, I think, maybe 2 years ago. So I agreed to do Larry's. But again, literature, not my strong suit. Not my strong suit. So take that into account. All right. So 3 stories we're going to talk about today. The first is called The Pinch Hitter, and the Trout. And this is really like a falling in love story. It's a romantic story. Man and woman, just basically 2 characters in the whole thing. There's another character, but really the whole story is just 2 people. It's about a kind of a baseball player at the end of his career going trout fishing and falling for a woman who's there trout fishing. And I think the story's really, is video okay, by the way? All right. Let me know if the video's okay. I'm getting some signals here that it might not be, but you guys are the final arbiters of whether video works or not, where you are. Anyway, I found the story quite well written, interesting. I think you have to have some appreciation for baseball and fly fishing. I have no appreciation for fly fishing. I think if you did, you would probably enjoy the story even more. I do know and appreciate baseball, So I think that at least resonated with me, that part of it. The fly fishing part, less, but still, I still found the story quite engaging and believable in terms of the kind of the love angle, the falling in love. Original. I'd never read anything like it. I don't know of a story like it. I think it worked. Again, it would work more if I knew more about fly fishing, because some of it's the intricacy of that. But yeah, I think it's well written and original and entertaining, and kind of gives you a nice warm feeling at the end. So it's good. I like it. I think the characters are well drawn. Again, particularly if you know baseball and you kind of know the pinch hitter, end of career, what that entails. If you know a little bit about baseball, I think that gives it color. And I think Larry does a really good job of characterization, both the baseball player and the woman he falls for. She's a little bit more abstract. You get to know her a little bit less. But still, I think characterization is good, and I found it an entertaining and worthwhile story to read. Again, this Forks in the Road by Larry Radke, Radtke, Radtke. You can find the book of short stories on Amazon. It's self-published by Larry. The second story is about two homeless guys, both of them homeless for different reasons. I won't give it away. It's another problem with literature is you don't want to give the story away. I think with the first one it's easy because anyway, this is a story of two homeless guys who go on a kind of a quest, like an adventure, and they're both there. So there's a little bit of a political message here, or maybe a lot of a political message here, about COVID, and this is a story about two homeless guys during COVID, and COVID plays a role in one of them becoming homeless. The other one is homeless because, or just given up on life in a sense because of government regulation of medicine. So there's that angle. There's a kind of a clearly anti-authoritarian government angle to all of this. I found the story itself, like the quest, the adventure they go on, and just the two characters, quite interesting and fun. I'm curious where Larry got the idea for this, and the details, all the details of it as well, are quite entertaining and interesting. And I don't know where he got the idea, where he got all of that. Where he got all of that from. They go try to hunt ducks in the Los Angeles River. And the sense of desperation, the sense of kind of homelessness, of giving up on life, I think is well captured. And of course, this quest is a quest that teaches them both about life and about their values, and causes them to rethink their values and recommit to living, if you will. And I think that's done fairly effectively, and I think it's convincing that this adventure and quest and how it evolves would have a real impact on their lives. It's not just frivolous, that it would really cause them to rethink it and turn their lives around. So I enjoyed that aspect. I enjoyed the characterization. The two men are interesting. I found the politics a little bit like, I don't know. I don't want to say preachy, because that's not it. Maybe I'm just sensitive to trying to convey a political message in a good story. I think that could, and this will be a theme, because I think that's a problem with the third story as well. I think it'd be toned down a little bit, and you'd still get the same effect, and you still get the same impact on the viewer in terms of the characters, because that's what matters here. It's the characters, the adventure, and their ability to change their life. I mean, that value judgment is so much more important than the political causes that are being discussed here. I think that goes over people's heads, and for non-objective reader, it would be confusing, and maybe they'd miss a lot of the point. They'd get maybe upset at some of the political statements, and then miss, I think, the story and the interest in the story. But again, much of it is really well written, and the descriptions of LA and of the adventure in the LA River and the ducks and all, I mean, it's really good. And the characters are interesting. So again, I recommend. It's called Blind Wager. It's like a blind wager, a bet. And then finally, Old Man Arnold's Rebellion. This one's more explicitly political. It's about a rancher who's dealing with California regulators. He's trying to preserve his property, and he kills a wolf, and of course the wolf is an endangered species, and the government's coming after him. And it has, really at the very end, it has elements of science fiction, and the beginning of kind of a big battle for freedom and liberty, and inspiration. I found it a little bit too much in that respect, in the if you will, science fiction part of it. I think there. Again, the best writing here, I think, is when there's a description of the values at stake, the description of the individuals and the struggles they are facing, the choices that they have to make. Like the description, the early part of the story, where the guy shot the wolf and now realizes he's in trouble. I think is the best part of it. So again, super original. I don't know where he comes up with these ideas. It's super original. It's a little bit, I think, difficult to really get into in terms of believability, in terms of the characters, in terms of what happens, particularly in the final parts of it, to really get too excited about this, to get to really get into the story itself. But I think it's enjoyable. Again, original, interesting characters, and although a little less developed than I think the previous two. And if you're in for the good guys fighting back against government bureaucrats and government regulations and government controls, yeah, this is a story for you. The beginnings of a revolution, just the very, very, very beginnings of a revolution. This might get you excited. There's a little bit of a John Galt's Gulch, hints in there as well. So I think a lot of people would enjoy it. I found it less aesthetically pleasing than the first two. All right. In other words, I'd recommend folks on the road try it out, give it a shot. You might like it. Let Larry know. You can get it on Amazon. Check it out. All right, let's see. Where are we? I think we've covered everything we planned to do for today. So that is everything I have. So we'll turn to the Super Chat. And for that, wait a minute. I want to remind you that this show is funded by you. You make this possible. Without you, this show could not exist. You are the source of income that makes all these shows possible. Let me just get all these screens lined up in this new setup. Super Chat is a great way to support the show because you get to ask questions. I get to answer the questions, both as a trade, value for value. You also, if you're a listener, and you enjoy the show, you get some value out of the show, you can express that value without asking a question by just doing a sticker. That's another way to express value and to trade with me. So, please consider doing that. Now we have goals for the first hour. It's $250. We're like $30 short of that. So please consider supporting the show so we can get to our numbers. And then if you'd like to become a monthly supporter, which is a great way to support the show and help it continue to thrive, you can do that on Patreon. Just go to Patreon and put in Yaron Brook Show and make a monthly commitment. And that's great because that is, I can plan based on that. I know exactly how much money is coming. You can also do that on PayPal. I think Patreon's a little easier to set up. All right, also to support the show, I have some sponsors. One of those sponsors is the Ayn Rand Institute. And Ayn Rand Institute wants to remind you that you can enroll now in something called ARI Live Courses. These are courses that are open to all, no application required. There's no long-term commitment. You take the courses that interest you. They work with your schedule. You take them whenever you want. You join live or you watch the recordings, whatever you want. Sometimes this, sometimes that. Depends on the week. Homework is optional. So you can control the acceleration of your growth, and homework will be graded, or you will get comments on your homework. All the courses run 8 to 10 weeks and include access to a personal success coach one-on-one to help you set goals, stay motivated, and make the most of the experience and of your learning. We've got 3 courses coming up starting in October. Objectivism through Ayn Rand's fiction. You got the philosophy of objectivism, which is an overview course on objectivism. And you've got objectivism, work, and business. And, wherever you are on the intellectual journey, wherever you are in your study of objectivism and Ayn Rand's ideas, these courses are going to enhance your understanding and deepen that understanding significantly. And they're going to be fun. And you're going to get to know fellow students, get to know the professors. So I encourage you to sign up. Best way to do that is to go to aynrand.org/start here. And actually, as a YBS listener, you get a discount. The discount code is 25YBS10. 25YBS10. So check out the courses, aynrand.org/start here. Now, next year, there'll be other courses. Every semester, there'll be new courses you can take. But start with these 3, choose the ones you want, and take it at your own speed. All right, what else? We've got Alex Epstein. Alex Epstein is the world expert on environmentalism, on climate change, on energy, and electricity, and alternative energy, and all these issues that are, I think, so crucial to what's going on in the world right now. Alex has been a voice of rationality in really a wilderness, but he's changed the debate about these issues. If you're interested at all in any of these issues and in what's going on in the world right now with regard to them, Alex is the guy to follow. You can do that on alexepstein.substack.com, alexepstein.substack.com. Sign up. I think it's free to Substack. You can get updated on what is going on in this area. You can get talking points to become a better communicator and just enhance your knowledge of this crucial area in our civilized world. And finally, Hendershot Wealth. Hendershot Wealth, that's Hendershot with 2 T's, Hendershot. 2tswealth.com, hendershotwealth.com/YBS is where you can find out about information about how to save money on your capital gains. Some of you might have a lot of stock. Let's say you've got, millions of dollars of Apple stock that's appreciated enormously since you bought it in 1994. We talked about 1994 earlier. And you've made just a huge amount, but if you sell it now and you live in California, let's say, you're going to pay over 1/3 of it in taxes. Well, Hendershot Wealth can help prevent that, help you reduce that tax bill dramatically, and push it out, defer the taxes in such a way so that you can continue to make money with your money without having to pay taxes to the government. So check it out. It's hendershotwealth.com, /YBS. And also check out the video I did with Robert Hendershot. It's on my YouTube channel. And you can find it by going to the playlist for sponsors. And there's a playlist with me and Robert talking about this particular product. If you've got appreciated stock, if you've got a business you're about to sell, or maybe you're only going to sell it in 3 to 5 years, in any case, this is a product you should be considering right now. All right, let me just thank our sticker people. Jasper, thank you, Jasper. Let's see, who else do we have? I know we had other stickers. Friend Harper, thank you. And Greg, and Barry did $50 sticker. Thank you, Barry. That is incredible. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Jonathan Honing. And I think we caught everybody. So we're still a little short of that first hour goal, so please consider coming in and with some support. Ask $20 questions. A few $20 questions will be amazing. Or do like Andrew, a $50 question. So let's take Andrew's $50 question. We'll start off with that. But of course, a bunch of small stickers also gets the job done. So please consider that. $1, $5, $10 stickers. A bunch of them. We can get to our targets. Andrew asks, having been swaying up to Ayn Rand, do you feel that you are always maturing? She said, no. A bit shocked. He, do you feel that you are constantly learning more about life? She, yes. And wonder how I ever survived not knowing what I know now. How do you interpret this? Well, that, as I said, maturing is not gaining new knowledge. Maturing, you reach a certain level of maturity and you're done, right? It's not an ongoing process. And that level of maturity, I think most of us gain it in our late teens or early 20s or maybe later 20s, depending on who you are. And that level of maturity is, again, the ability to think long term, the ability to defer rewards, the ability to save, in a sense, the ability to invest, but the ability to think about the future. And a lot of that just means being rational. Because what does being rational mean? Being rational means, among other things, being able to project into the future and understand the consequence of your actions in the future and take that into account. So once you reach a certain level of maturity, you're done. It's not something you keep growing in. So once you can do that functioning, you're done. But you're never done learning. There's always new stuff. There's always new stuff that you didn't know before. You're never, ever, ever done learning in life. Never, ever done growing in life. But it's like, is your rationality growing? No, my rationality is, I'm rational. Is your maturity growing? No, I'm mature. I achieve maturity. And the only reason we have a concept for maturity is because we can contrast it with immature, both immature adults and certainly immature children. And we can see the evolution of children as they gain the rational capabilities, as they gain the ability to resist instant gratification, to resist the passions, to resist their whims, and to reorient themselves around values and reorient themselves around the long term rather than about the short term and about whim worshiping. That's the process of maturity. Thank you, Andrew, for the $50. That is very generous. Clark, are you not the author of your thoughts? Are you not the author of your thoughts? You're just the editor. Are you not the author of your thoughts? Well, then, who is the author of my thoughts? I mean, there's a sense that your thoughts are delivered by your subconscious without your direct control. What you're doing is prompting for the thought to come without reviewing the thought in advance and then bringing it out. And there is a sense in which, as it's happening, you're editing it. Yes. Yes, but if you are responsible for the content that your subconscious has, if you are the author of the thinking that made possible what you have, the focus, then you're also the author of your thoughts ultimately. Maybe not in real time, but you are the one who caused these particular ones. That's a good question to ask our philosopher friends when they're here. Andrew, cliche but true. Art is nourishment for the soul. Just went to a sculpture garden that had technically great works of people and modern sculpture. Plain or mangled shapes in space. The people were much more interesting. Yeah, but the people, was the sculpture of people? Technically great works of people. Yeah, I mean, it's not even interesting. The mangled shapes are nothing. They're zeros. They mean nothing. They say nothing. They convey nothing. They impact you nothing, right? They're just not, they don't have anything. Whereas if it's figurative, at least it has something to say. It's not always interesting. It's not always good, but it has something to say. I'm glad you found the people more interesting. Hopefully they were also nourishing. Michelangelo David is nourishing and inspiring, but it really is nourishment for the soul. It really is. It gives you energy. It gives you focus. It gives you a sense of what is possible. Andrew says, yes, sculptures are people. The other thing about a lot of modern figurative sculpture is that it tends to be very naturalistic. It tends to be, a person sitting on a bench or a child playing along, fully dressed, just like you cast a child, in bronze. There's nothing there. There's no stylization. There's no added element. There's no value projection other than this is life. This is what it's. And there's some interesting aspects to that, but most of it is pretty boring. I mean, one of the things you notice here in Florence when you look at the sculptures is, the intense drama of it all. I mean, there's a beautiful sculpture at the Palazzo Vecchio, of Cellini, which is Theseus holding the head of Medusa. And it's just a gorgeous sculpture. And again, it's not in action, but it's right after he's chopped Medusa's head off, holding Medusa's head in front of him, standing with a sword, proud. It's dramatic, it's strong, it's powerful, and it's I'm pretty sure it's in the nude. I think it's in the nude. As sculpture, I think, should be. I think sculpture should always be in the nude, or almost always be in the nude. So much of modern, in Palazzo Vecchio, there's a modern sculpture they put up of a figurative modern sculpture of a woman looking at her iPhone with headphones on, and fully dressed and everything. It's like they missed the whole spirit of the place. It's like the whole spirit of all the sculptures there, is lacking in this completely naturalistic, unbelievably boring sculpture of a woman doing what everybody else does. Not everybody is not everybody is David with a sling, getting ready to fight Goliath. Not everybody is Theseus, who's just Perseus. Is it Perseus? Perseus, who's just chopped the head of Medusa, the feared Medusa, and still can't look at it because I think if he looks at it, he still will turn into stone. It's not real life what they're sculpting. It's idealized and it's dramatized, and it's a projection of man as he could be, and this woman right in the middle of the palazzo looking at the iPhone, uninteresting. It could be just a human being. Look at the iPhone, fully dressed, At least make a nude, or at least, nudity essentializes things. By clothing them, you just make them look like everybody else. It makes it boring. And even in the where the David is in the room next door, there is a sculpture, and I forget what the theme is, but it's a man. He's holding a woman. She's way up there above him, and he's stomping on it. There's another woman below, and it's all dynamic in a circular motion. Twisted bodies. Everything's twisted. Everything's in action. Everything's dramatic. Something, life and death, is happening here. And then you go out and see, man at a bench sitting there. I mean, that is what so much of kind of modern figurative, it's just dull and boring and uninteresting. The drama, the excitement, is gone. The heroism is gone. It's just gone. You almost never see it. Richard, thank you, Andrew. I disagree with Jordan Peterson's assertion that maturity requires parenthood. I've known immature, irresponsible parents whose kids have grown up struggling with life. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree. And I think Jordan would even agree that some parents resist maturity even after they have kids. He's saying it's a necessary. I'm not sure he's saying it's the only requirement. That is, I'm not sure he's saying by having kids you're automatically mature. But it is a wake-up call if you're immature. And there are a lot of comedies about this, right? A bachelor finds himself with a little baby for a few days and has to, a irresponsible, whim-worshipping guy suddenly finds himself, there's 3 men and a baby, and movies like that, where suddenly you've got to change diapers and you've got to feed the thing, and it's crying at night, and reality is just in your face constantly. Babies don't let you forget about reality for 1 second. Now, people who are immature screw it up quite a bit. But people who have any semblance of responsibility, this is a wake-up call to become more mature. But it's not necessary, and I don't think it's sufficient. It's neither necessary nor sufficient. So I agree with you. Liam says, maturity is taking more pride in the process than in the outcome. I don't know if that's true. I mean, certainly it's good to take pride in the process. Outcomes are good too. Appreciating the process. But I wouldn't define maturity that way. It's certainly maybe part of maturity. It's part of this appreciating the time aspect of action, of the pursuit of values. But I don't know if that is the way I would define maturity. I don't think that's true. It's much more related to the ability not to live on whim, by whim. Raphael says, please try Trattoria Giovanni in Florence. Trattoria Giovanni. I'll have to write that down. Not familiar with that one. So Raphael recommends Trattoria Giovanni. Okay, thanks, Raphael. Let's see. Harper Campbell. When reading online comment sections, it appears the culture is saturated with racism and hatred. Is this due to immaturity, fear of taking the risks necessary to make your life something? Well, I'd say a few things. First, I wouldn't use the comment section on online platforms as a reflection of the world out there. It's a reflection of a subculture within that world. It's a reflection of certain people, but not. I don't think it's a reflection of the world generally out there. There are plenty of people who've never made a comment on a chat board in their life. A vast majority of people. So that's one. But why are they racist? It's a product of tribalism. It's a product of the negation of reason, which has made them afraid, fearful, and insecure about their own future. They have to blame somebody. Racism is a way to blame the other that belongs to another tribe. You remember, we've talked a lot about this, that tribalism is a consequence of people's inability to think for themselves. They struggle in life as a consequence. They're therefore drawn to a group that can tell them what to think. They can tell them how to face life. Tribalism is the refuge of fearful, unthinking human beings. And it, tribalism means the people in another tribe are bad, and often the tribes are one of the most obvious, most primitive, most barbaric forms of forming tribes is around racial groups, or around the appearance of racial groups. And that results in racism. Again, hatred comes from fear and is again a product of irrationality. It's a product of not knowing how to deal with the world, not knowing how to deal with reality, not knowing how to deal with life, and therefore lashing out at the world because you don't know what to do, because you're not using the tool that you have to do it, to deal with it. Rafael, please also try bistecca alla Florentina and il Latini. All right, we're getting a bunch of steak recommendations here. All right, I think those two are on my list, or at least one. Yeah, I think those two have definitely been mentioned and are on my list. Thank you, Rafael. Clark Young, economists are saying Hayek was right about the past, but AI changes the game, the calculation problem. Solved. Modern AI supercomputers can handle what Soviet planners couldn't. Yeah, they are saying that. I'll do a show on this because it's a big issue. But it's partially a problem of not understanding Hayek, and it's partially a problem of Hayek himself not properly, I think, defining what he meant by the calculation problem. The calculation problem is not a calculation problem. It's a metaphysical problem. It's a problem of not being able to know the values of individuals. That is, what is something worth to me? A central planner cannot know that. It can so it can try to estimate or average out what is important to people and how much people are willing to pay for something. But it can't literally get inside my brain, at least not without a neural link, and figure out what's important to me at this particular moment, what I'm willing to pay and what I'm not willing to pay, how far I'm willing to drive to get something, how I'm not willing to drive, what job I find appealing, what job I don't try to. All the millions of little decisions you make on a day-to-day basis, AI cannot predict that. It's not an issue of the data's there, I don't know how to calculate it. That AI could solve. The problem is it doesn't have the data. The most important data is people's values, which are changing constantly and are being updated constantly. And there's no way, again, without a chip in our brain that sends all that data to central AI to figure that out, and therefore to be able to adjust supply and demand in anticipation of that. So the problem is that it's not an issue of the enormity of the calculator. It's not how big and powerful the calculator is. It's an issue of, does the calculator have the right data? And in this case, no, and it can never have the right data, because the data is the choices, but fundamentally the values of individuals. Andrew, you've said metaphysics came easy to you. I think it's why Rand was shocked at the idea of constantly maturing. Early on, she got a key metaphysical principle, the primacy of existence, which is the foundation of maturity. Yes, I think that's right. I think the primacy of existence is the foundation of maturity. It's to recognize what is metaphysical, recognize what you can change and what you can't change, is a big part of maturity. And that your wishes are not a claim on the world, are not a claim on reality. Your wishes count for nothing. What counts is your values and your actions in pursuit of those values, guided by reason. That's what counts. Your whims count for nothing. Can you go over some of Patrick Ben-David's capitalist answers from today's show on Jubilee? Yes, I'm going to look at that and review it. It's too bad they didn't have me on that show. I should have been the guy doing it. Roland says, so jealous. I've been to Florence once. Now I know I have to visit again. Yes, you do. And there's so much good stuff to see here. Definitely worth a visit. Gulag. Okay. How would you address private investors buying property and developing areas, therefore increasing property tax and pricing people out? Thank you. Why are they increasing property tax? So first of all, I have no problem with private investors buying property and developing areas. That's progress, right? We want more development, not fewer development. But I'm not sure why that increases property taxes. Property taxes in California are not, for example, are not determined by what other people are doing. They're determined by the last price you paid on a particular on the house that you own. So, and I'm not sure why it prices people out. If they're developing areas, which means they're building stuff, that actually will lower the price, right? More supply, given a fixed demand, will decrease prices. The more they develop, the lower prices will be. So maybe I don't understand the question. Maybe you need to give me more information for me to be able to answer it better. But based on that, I just think it's upside down. Peter writes, Marabins, love you, YouTube channel, love your YouTube channel. God, love your YouTube channel. Don't love immigrants coming in, bringing their uncles with weird sounding names. They're gonna take our Bobs. Who's Bob? I don't get that. All right, but Peter and Marabins have their own language. Coming in, bringing their uncles with weird sounding names, they're gonna take our Bobs. All right, Michael. Can you try and get on Graham Stevens' show? He has a huge audience and is very open to new types of guests. Sure, I can certainly try to do that. I don't know Graham Stevens, but I'll look him up and see. Let's see here. All right. Thanks, Michael. Andrew, I think it's dangerous to care for your children more than yourself. What happens when your child doesn't need or want that level of care anymore? Yeah, I mean, I think that whole conception is strange. You care about your children because you care about yourself, and yes, and what happens when they grow up and they leave, right? So, but I think your caring changes over time as well. John, always trying to do a getcha question on me. 80% of Pakistanis are products of first cousin marriages. Do you think that is in part, I guess, do you think this is in part the high crime rate of Pakistanis in the UK? So do I think that's why they're more likely to be criminals or high criminality? I don't know. First cousin marriages tend to cause all kinds of birth defects, and I think a lot of these children do have birth defects. I don't know what kind of impact it has on intelligence. It's very hard to tell. There are other communities where there's a lot of inbreeding, for lack of a different word, because they're just small communities which have done fine in the world. So I doubt that is the cause of crime in particular. I mean, I think the cause of crime in England with Pakistanis is pretty straightforward, and that is the lack of enforcement. that is the British police and the British legal system treat them with kid gloves. They're afraid of being called racist if they sentence them to jail terms, or they identify them as bad actors or as criminals, and therefore there's a two-tiered justice system in the UK. If you're a white Brit and you commit a crime, and if you're a Pakistani, you commit a crime, you don't get punished the same amount. So first, the police are not doing their job. I'd say that's number one. Second, the British culture is not demanding assimilation. And part of that is welfare and the fact that they're not expected to work and they're not expected to become Brits. And that's a problem throughout Europe where you don't get assimilation. You go and the main fault in that is with the welfare state. I don't know if to what extent cousin weddings have to do with crime. I mean, that's an empirical question, but I'm skeptical. It does have to do with a lot of health problems and a lot of birth defects and maybe lower IQ and maybe then be qualified for lower end jobs, but you can still do those lower end jobs without being a criminal. So I'd say the criminality is much more an element of culture and the unwillingness of the Brits to demand and the assimilation. And the number one, two ways in which you demand assimilation. One is the law, you enforce the law 100%. And second is work. You have to demand that people work. Freedom First says, I've watched your show Heroes and Art today. Highly recommend watching the movie Flash of Genius. It's about a real hero based on a true story. Interesting. I don't think I've heard of that movie. Thank you. I always am looking for good movie recommendations. Flash of Genius. All right. Thank you, Freedom First. Ben Jackson, do you think people are able to have multiple careers in life? I'm an ad copywriter. I love my work, but I also do architecture design on the side. Yeah, I do think you can have multiple careers. I think it's hard. I've certainly had multiple careers in parallel and sequentially, and you can do both. It's difficult. Not everybody can do it, but it's certainly possible. So, and you have to realize that you're giving up something. You're never going to become as good of an architect as you would be if you devoted full time to it. You'll never become as good of an ad copywriter as you could be if you devoted your full time to it. So as long as you're willing to live with that, with the fact that you'll never be the best that you could be in one of those, yeah, you could probably juggle two careers at the same time. Simon, would it be justified to displace the Gazans and have Israel just absorb the land in order to keep Israelis safe? I mean, where do you displace them to? Right? So it could be justified if there was some way to do it. But it's not necessary, right? It's not necessary to do it, and there's no way to send them. They don't want to go. The people who nobody wants to accept them. I mean, the obvious solution would be for Egypt to take the Gaza Strip and make it part of Egypt. Israel would love that. But, you know, it could be justified if it was done right and it was thoughtful. I think the option right now of giving them the ability to voluntarily leave, if they want to leave, and finding them places where they could go is a good option, and that would reduce the population in Gaza, so reduce the problem somewhat. But it still needs a solution locally. And that means first winning the war. All right, final two questions, guys, unless you want to ask something before I finish these. Friend Hopper, I contrast maturity from childishness, which is characterized by a lack of impulse control, that's right, plus a lack of agency, yep, and emotionalism, yes. Maturity is impulse control plus personal responsibility plus reasoning. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right, but you have to think about what impulse control means and how it manifests itself and how all of those evolve over time as you grow in childhood. That is, by the time you're in your 20s, those should all be gone. You should have shifted to becoming mature. But yeah, that's pretty good. I like that. Mpoki, if someone films me in public and posts it online for clicks, isn't that using my image property without consent? Why should free expression in this context override image rights? I mean, it's a complicated question. If we live in a world in which the expectation is that when you're outside, given that there are cameras everywhere, that, you know, when you're walking down the street, when you're doing things in public, you have no expectation of privacy. Then you have no expectation of privacy. Then people can do what they will with any images they catch. But generally, I think that you're right. I think that your image is you. And this is why, for example, I don't know, when I film my talks, I often have to ask the consent of the students to use the video or announce, you are now entering a space where we are filming and we will be using this video. And by entering the space, you're granting consent for us to use this video. And I think you should have to, this is why in a lot of videos you see, faces are blurred out because they haven't received consent. And I think that's how it should be. I think we live in a culture now where people can throw up a camera and live stream anything, anytime, anywhere, that all of that has gone out the window, and we really need to think about, but live streaming really creates an issue. You can't get consent live. Maybe we can create software that can, maybe it already exists, that as you're live streaming blurs out certain faces. I mean, this is something that needs to be thought through in terms of property rights and in terms of your image rights versus the fact that you're in public versus the technology that now enables this so easily. How do we draw the lines? It's something that we should ask like Adam Ossoff when he's on the show next time to talk about. Because, yeah, it is interesting where you draw the line exactly. All right, guys, thank you. Really appreciate the support from all the super chatters and the sticker people. Thank you for all that. I will see you guys tomorrow, probably at around the same time, maybe an hour later, maybe an hour earlier, but sometime in the range of this time. I assume that tomorrow I'll be in an office. It'll be a different setting, maybe more boring, I don't know. But it'll be a little easier, and it'll be my home for the show for the next 3 weeks. All right, everybody, I will see you tomorrow. Have a great night. Don't forget, patreon.com. Support the show on patreon.com. Value for value. Thanks, guys. Bye. Have a good night.